Hi. One important aspect of ASP.NET MVC is query string. How we receive data which is sent from a query string and where do we get it. Definitely the pattern is controller and its action. And if you see and go back to the route configuration, we have third option, which is an ID. So if we do the slash and we send some number, that would be received as an argument in that specific action. So let's see how we do this, and I will go and add one action result, and that is, let's say, for example, time, which is a times table, and we just return view. So let's see how we get ID over here. So what I want is that when somebody type in a URL, that is home/table, and with slash with some ID, so that specific times table should be generated. So how do we send that to the view and how we get it over here? So let's add view table. So it's adding an empty view, and I want to add a razor syntax over here, and let's add a small snippet. How do we want to look it, how it should look like, and let's use span, and I will use 2 into times table is equal to @ 2 into I, and definitely I will put a break over here, and if I run this, it should generate a 2's time table. So it's generating a 2's time table, and this is because we just hard coded, and this value I want this value to be generic value that should be like this /2/3, something like that, and that should be received to this view, and that view should generate that table. So I can say that 2's table, and this 2 number should be coming from the controller. So how do we receive this over here? So let's close this, and here we have an integer ID, which is a third optional, and that is an optional ID, which means that if we run this, we should receive it over here. So if I add a breakpoint over here, so before returning a view, let's see what we get, and we will be getting some interesting things. So /home/table 2, and in the ID we are getting 2. Let's press F5 and continue, and let's first see the behavior of this application. So if I send this, it's saying that not nullable type system int32, which is that we are sending null over here, which is that we are sending ID as null over here, and this integer is not nullable. In C#, as you know, that it has an option to make a variable unnullable, which can store additional null value other than its normal available range. So if I run this, and if I say home/table, so ID has a null value, and if that's a null value, we can make a business logic, you can make your algorithm work like that, that if user does not specify any ID, how your program should behave. So I'm going to send a ViewBag dot let's say num is equal to id. So I can make a decision over here that if user sends a null value, I should not assign any value, anything to the num, but let's keep it like that. So over here I will be using ViewBag dot num stable and ViewBag dot num. Let's store it somewhere. So integer that can be null val or n is equal to ViewBag dot num. So if n is not equal to null, then we are definitely going to generate a times table, otherwise we are not going to generate any times table, right? So this is actually n and this is n. So we are receiving anything sent through a query string will be received over here, and we are setting a ViewBag, and view is actually accessing that num through a ViewBag. So let's run this. And let's do 3. Right, so we have a breakpoint. Let's remove this. So id is 3. Press F5. Setting a ViewBag, setting back to, so we are getting a 3's timetable, and then let's say if we are doing 5, we are getting a 5's timetable. If we are doing 10, we are getting a 10's timetable. That's how we do this. We can also do this like question mark, the typical query string style, id is equal to 4. So this is a typical query string style. We can also do that, and then ASP.NET can map and can bind these query string values to the arguments of a function. So let's add something more to this. Let's say for example I'm sending a name. So who is actually generating that times table, let's say. So ViewBag.name is equal to name, and let's access that to timetable of someone. So we are getting name over here, and we will be receiving over here. So by default string can accept null, so there is a possibility that user does not specify any value to the name, or even does not specify a parameter as name over there in a URL. So /home/table, this time we are sending null. So this is timetable of null something. So sending, let's say name is equal to John, and id is 5. So 5's table of John. Oh, we are getting this like this as a code. So let's do this, John, and this, right? So that's how we actually send query string, and definitely we can add some more variables over here, and these variables will be received over here. Specifically with the id, we need to take care of this, that in route configuration we have specified exactly the id, so that must be exactly the id variable over there. So if I rename is and say it a num, say num, let's say num, and if I run this with a parameter, let's say 5, which is our in the routes, which is null in that case, and although we are sending some value, but it's treating it as a null value because it's accepting ID over there. So that must be actually ID. So ID was null, and we need to send ID. So if I run this with an ID, it's getting there, right? So that must be actually ID, exactly name that is specified over there. So that's all about sending data through query string. So from the URL we can send a query string pattern, and then that pattern can be received by that specific action, and these are actually mapped with the parameters, and you can retrieve data from those parameters. All right.